So remember, right after the Holy Spirit was poured out, they said, these people are drunk. Peter said, they're not drunk as ye suppose, or they're not drunk with wine, but they are filled with the Spirit. Remember? So then he turned to the Jews and he said, Jesus Christ, whom you crucified. God is raised from the dead on the third day, and he went up into heaven. And then afterwards, when he preached on from there, every time he turned to unbelievers, he said this. Every single time Peter preached the gospel to unbelievers, he said this. He came for the forgiveness and the removal of sin. See, the church continually preaches forgiveness of sins, and then we want to teach believers how to deal with the remainder of sin instead of teaching the forgiveness and removal of sin like Peter did, which explains why they never had a problem with the Spirit moving and seeing power and signs and wonders in the book of Acts, because they never preached just the forgiveness, but they preached the forgiveness and the removal of sin. See, when Jesus died, he didn't only forgive you your sin, he also removed it. When the woman caught in the act was brought to Jesus, and he said, I do not condemn you, after he asked the Pharisees to, whoever had no sin to cast the first stone at her. He said, go and sin no more. But what we read wrong is, or what we've been taught wrong is that he commanded her to go and sin no more. But if you read it, there's a colon in between, which means the first part of the sentence is the exact equivalent of the second part of the sentence. In other words, forgiveness is the equality of removing sin. See, you don't receive forgiveness for something you have never done wrong. You only receive forgiveness for something you have done wrong. Whenever Jesus went and healed the sick, he said, what is easier to say unto this man, take up your bed and walk, or I forgive you your sin. So the moment we remove that, we remove the power. The moment we stop looking at Calvary and what's happened there is no power, because we end up with a conscience that is seared. And then we want to say God's not speaking to us. No, God's been speaking. God keeps on speaking. In fact, he even speaks to unbelievers. They just don't hear him all the time, which is why they need believers to interpret, because believers have consciences, or are supposed to have a conscience that is not seared, but a conscience that's clear to God or towards God. So when our conscience is blood washed and cleared, we can hear him. But if your conscience is seared, you won't hear him. I hear people all the time, I've gone through a season. God hasn't been speaking to me. No, you're lying. Your conscience was seared. Because you were condemned within yourself. It's not God that's not speaking. How will God speak to Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar, who was not a part of God's people? And then Daniel and Joseph had to stand up and speak and tell them what God has been saying.